All right, so screen share's opened up. I want us to get started on our next project here. You can keep working on your expressions entry task, but I don't want you to take it too seriously because it's just kind of getting you warmed up. So the next project that we're going to be combining a couple of our different previous animation principles on is a head turn. A head turn is a very useful skill to have in your animation toolkit because so frequently our characters are going to be interacting with other characters or interacting with their environments, and we as humans are going to turn our heads to see where that sort of thing interacts. So I'm going to walk you through the project. I've broken it down into work days. There's 5 of them in class. You can always work on them outside of class. But that's our major focus today, is the day 1 requirements on the head turn project. The focus is going to be character design, getting really detailed with the character that you're going to be turning their head. Once you understand their story, it gives you more opportunity to add more detail to your animated project as a whole. Okay? Our goals for today are to practice something called the Loomis Method. Has anybody heard of that before? Okay, handful. Cool. It's a very useful way to start breaking down faces and heads, and I want you to practice a little bit today. To draw heads, and then establish a character to animate a character head turn. So, if we go to your weekly thread for the day, you'll see that there is a link right here for project number 3, head turn, which I have broken down into 5 days of sort of focuses that I want us to be focused on. So what those days entail is today and tomorrow we're designing our character. We're sketching out some different ways using basic shapes and the Loomis method to experiment with how we want our character to look. And then tomorrow we'll have a little bit of figuring out what the story is of your head turn, even if it's really simple. Even though this animation is only required to be 1 second at least, you can go more. But we still want to have everything we do needs some type of story that we're trying to communicate. That's the whole point of these principles, right? But today's focus is drawing with basic shapes and using the Loomis method, practicing the Loomis method to draw heads from references. You can plan out the expressions that your character is going to make, and then you can just do some concept practice type sketches to get more familiar with this character that you're going to be animating. Okay? Day 3 is Monday the 16th. This wraps around the weekend, so you can keep practicing the things that I show you today and tomorrow if you'd like, but our next official day on the workday is Monday the 16th. That's when we're going to plan out the timing. That's where we're going to set up our keyframes, extremes, and in-betweens, and then we're also going to set up our project. We're setting up our project tomorrow so that come Monday, we're ready to start actually animating by the end of the day. Our block day is a work day. You can ask your friends, you can ask me for input, practice reading your time charts, and then we'll use the main class period as our completion day. Then day 5 is Thursday when we meet again next week, the last day before break. This is your chance to put some final touches with the main question of how can you make your motion even better, polishing your animation, making small adjustments, and then finally submitting to Canvas. This has a deadline of the 17th of January of next year. Oops, I gotta change that so it's not 24 because this is way past the deadline. But head turn is pretty self-explanatory. If you would like some examples, I've linked a handful of them in the resources section right here, which just takes you to a YouTube search for head turn animation. Okay? Super simple. There's going to be lots of options because this is a very common exercise to do in animation practicing, animation schooling, right? We don't have to go this detailed, and this comes from a specific lesson. But this has lots and lots of examples of how a head turn should be looking. There is also, in the resources section, a playlist I've been putting together specifically for head turns. Some of these videos are quite long, like this one is 1.5 hours and this one is 2.5 hours. But it's going to have a lot of information that I'm going to be translating over the next few days if you'd like to get a little jump start or a little preview into how I'm going to be showing you these head turns. Okay? Our main focus for today is the Loomis method. The Loomis method, which I'm going to switch over to my camera here in a second, is this really interesting way to start plotting out a head specifically from a reference. What I want you to do today is practice the Loomis method if you've not tried it before. while also mixing in some just kind of basic sketches, basic doodles of what you want your character to potentially look like and what type of expression you want them to potentially make. So let me get some of this junk out of the frame here. Okay, I'm just going to scoot and pull the layout. Okay, so the Loomis method is a way to take, this is something you can follow along with me on. It's going to take a little bit of practice because it's using some sort of mathematical, some sort of graphmatical type shapes in order to, oh, dang it. Let me do this. Let's see. The higher quality version. Okay, that should be pretty good. Okay, cool. All right, so the Loomis method is a way specifically to be drawing heads, human heads at least. You can expand it past human heads, but it's a good baseline because we know how our parts are sort of laid out. And it's also a good way to plot out expressions or features like you would on a graph. Okay? So, in order for me to show you how the Loomis method works, there is also a video on in the resources section of project number 3, but I'm going to go to, on the screen share, you should see me looking up Unsplash. I spelled it so wrong. I put Unsplans. Well, I spelled it too wrong. Even Google couldn't help me there. Unsplash. Okay, there we go. Again, I like Unsplash just because it's royalty free, and there is a Creative Commons to it as well. There's a lot of really useful type stuff going on in here. So I'm just going to look up face reference, or actually head reference, because I want to see the whole skull. All right? So the cool part about the Loomis method is because it's a strategy to create the head piece by piece, you can use basically any reference and the skills will still apply because you're kind of breaking it down Lego style as compared to trying to copy it like you would directly, like if you were trying to make a direct copy of it. Just show me heads. Okay. Let's do this guy right here. Okay, so what I'm thinking about here, you can't see it on the screen. Let me switch over. Our human heads are made up of basically the same amount of parts, more or less. We've got skulls, jaws, eyes, noses, ears, mouths, and hair. It's pretty typical things that are going to be shared amongst all of your characters. With the Loomis method, you can start thinking about how these pieces interact with one another by trying to lay out where the planes, P-L-A-N-E-S, of the face lie. And so, a lot of this terminology might be a little bit intimidating as we start off. But I'm going to have my reference over on this other side right here so that I can show you, I can switch back and forth between the two of what you should be looking for. The major parts of the Loomis breakdown, oops, I hit the arrow key, is all of us as humans have a cranium, so we've got a more circular portion of our skull. And then all of us as humans have a more square part with the mandible, with the chewing muscles. That is going to be some type of shape that's usually like trapezoidal in nature, kind of bucket shaped, maybe a little bit, cup shaped or glass shaped. But these two parts are integral to the Loomis method, which I'm realizing now is hard to see with the pencil strokes, because these are our two starting points from which we plot out pieces like the eyebrow line, the bottom of the nose, where the chin connects, where the ear might happen. It's a lot of pieces all stemming from this cranium circle, which I'm going to put in Sharpie. Cranium is circle. Okay. And then the jawbone is kind of what I've it helps me understand it. So, if we take a look at my reference here, okay, we can see that this subject has a circle that lives right around here, kind of following the borders of our reference photo. Okay? If we imagine a circle, it's even more helpful because of their red face paint. We kind of can see, based on the way that the cloth curves as well. You guys seeing as I move my mouse? Here, let me actually, what if we did this? You can see, if you imagine a circle right here, that's the first part of the Loomis method, is trying to figure out where these circles are. Where does that cranium happen? All right? And what that looks like in your drawing is really simple. Let me switch. Sorry, I got a lot of screen switching to do here. With the Loomis method, I want to think about just kind of looking at my reference. If you look up at me on the screen, I'm not looking at my drawing. I'm looking at my reference. Let me do this on another page right here. I'm not looking at my hand as I'm drawing. I'm just kind of imagining the circle that this character's cranium occupies, and then once I feel pretty confident about it, I'm just going to press down, and it's going to create a cranium circle. Okay? So, with this cranium circle, the next step is adding a little bit more detail on where these sides of the head are going to appear. Humans, with our faces, we've got rounded portions, we have flat portions, we have crazy ear-shaped portions. But with the Loomis method, you break those portions down step by step, and the next one that's really important is about where the ears live. That's about where the side of your head, if you look up at me, is going to be flattening. Okay? I've got a round cranium. It's typically, well, most of us do. It's typically going to stay below your nose. It happens, if you're looking at me, in between your hairline and right underneath your nose. So if you follow my mustache and my hairline, that's where my cranium circle sort of lives. Looking at my reference, right, we have this really handy distinction between the two colors that I'm going to be looking for while I think about where does the flat piece of this character's head live. And the flat pieces are usually where you imagine the ears to be, but instead of being circles, they are a little bit more cylindrical. Okay? This one you can sketch a little bit more. You don't have to plot out as much since my character's head's turned is to the side. You know, I'm going to do a couple versions here, thinking about which way, if I was looking at this character, the eyes are here, where's the ear going to live? So in this reference that I've chosen to go with here, it's hard to see because we can't actually see their ears, but we can imagine where their ears might be and then remove some of this extra little sketching here until we see the more flat side. Wherever that flat ear could live, wherever that flat part of the head could be, we want to think about how does that relate to our reference. All right? Making sense so far? We're just plotting out how this reference's head is laid out. Okay? The next step in using the Loomis method effectively is trying to figure out where the eyebrows are and where the nose is. Okay? These are, if we look at a human face, let me pull one up again, perhaps on the projector screen. Human faces are kind of divided into thirds. Hi, good morning. What's very typical, and especially, this was especially me when I was practicing drawing and trying to learn a little bit more seriously how to draw, is I would make my foreheads too small. Humans, we don't realize how big our foreheads actually are. It's not a drawback so much as it is our human heads are kind of shaped into 3 distinct thirds, right? So if we look above the eyebrows, that's about a third. Between the eyebrows and the nose, that's about a second third. And then the rest of the mouth and chin and cheeks, that's the third third. Kind of like, if I go back to my projector here, and then let me just minimize this. Kind of like, if we're looking head on at a face, head on, it's going to be broken out into 3 pieces, all right? Mouth down here, forehead up here. I'm going to put the number 4. Forehead, and then these are eyes. All right. I drew most of my starting heads with the forehead way too small and the eyes way too high up, which is okay if that's what you're trying to do, but if you're trying to be realistic with your Loomis methods, you want to kind of stick to this shape right here. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting off track. So what we're prioritizing right now is this section. We're looking at where the eyes live, where the eyebrows live, and where the mouth can start a little bit later because we need this nose line right here in order to understand where my face is occurring. Okay? So I'm going to look at my reference once again, pull it over to the other monitor so you can actually see how I'm drawing here. I'm looking at these eyebrows, and these eyebrows need to cut across the ear oval that we've plotted out, sort of the way if you imagine a rubber band is wrapped around this ball. So part of animating, part of drawing, part of trying to be referencing realistically is you do need to think in 3D a little bit. This is something that comes with time. If this is something you're struggling with currently, don't worry, but it does take practice. You just have to do a little bit every day, and then it will you'll start to see it, okay? So, enough yakking. This is about where I would imagine my rubber band lies, and I'm only going to draw the part that I can see. It's pretty inconsistent, so let me try and get it a little bit more on one solid line, right? Okay? This line that you draw that cuts across, perpendicular of the ear oval, like that. This is going to be where your eyebrows live, okay? So this part, all of this space up here, is the forehead section. All of this space right here is going to be the eye section, and then we'll get to the mouth a little bit later. All right? So I'm going to draw some very simple eyebrows just along this brow ridge line, just so we can tell that that's what this line is about. I can also use my reference if I'm thinking about this like a graph, can plot it out. I did this reference a little bit more egg-shaped. It's a little bit too ovoid, but the idea is still there. Okay? Put a little eyebrow on that line. What we want to think about next is where does the chin live? Okay? This is a third of our, not a half. This is a third of our rectangle. This is the second third of our rectangle. If we draw a third, 3 of 3, we want to think about where the chin bottoms out, okay? And chins are a lot lower, the same way that foreheads are a lot bigger. Chins are a lot lower than we realize. So I'm going to place my chin right about here, maybe add a little bit of just a little line here and there so that it's very obvious that's where my chin is, because in my reference the chin is more pronounced than it wouldn't be, or than it otherwise would be. Okay? And now you might be starting to see, if we look at this cranium shape, we're getting to the jawbone stage of the Loomis method. If we look at this cranium shape, it's kind of starting to look like a skull a little bit, right? If you imagine some lines connecting the cranium to the circle, we're starting to get a skull. All right? And this part of the rectangle, let me pull this over this way, it's a mouth portion. Here's our thirds rectangle. We got forehead, eyes, and mouth, which means that this line, the bottom of our cranium, is about where our nose is going to live. Okay? So I'm just going to draw the most simple nose. This reference has a pretty buttony type nose. Okay? A little bit more detail, a little bit more scrapes here. Okay? This is not exactly where our reference's chin happens. Okay? If we look at my version, it looks a little handsome Squidward in how narrow the bottom half of the face is. But on a human, our faces are not this narrow. Once we get more into character design, I'll talk about like shape language and how the shape of a character's face influences your assumptions about them. But for the case of the Loomis method, my characters my references face does not cut directly up. So I want to make sure that gets reflected in my drawing here. Okay? I'm going to pull the chin out a little bit more, maybe round it up a little bit more, in a way the same way that we crossed across the ear plane, we're going to pull down the other direction, making 90-degree angles, which will turn into where the jaw connects. Okay? So then I can erase this original skull line that I put forth. And we have, using a handful of these shapes, laid out a skull shape, a head shape, that is a lot easier to imagine where the pieces go, where the details go, after the fact, that we can start laying out here. All right, so my nose is going to be at the bottom of my cranium circle. My eyebrows are going to live on a ridge that crosses my ear cylinder. This is really hard to see. Sorry, guys. Let me switch to this. Okay. And using these pieces, using these steps, using that cranium circle, using that jawbone, thinking about the face as a rectangle in thirds, you can draw basically any head in basically any position. All right? How far you go with the details is your call. All right? See, my character has their eyes closed. Maybe a little bit of information, a little bit of shading. Let me make their eyelids a little bit thicker. Okay? Extend the bridge of their nose up a little bit. Maybe add a little bit of eye socket detail right here. We can add some anatomical pieces like the little Cupid's bow, I think that's what that's called, between the nose and the mouth. You can think about, I'm not very good at drawing mouths, so we'll just draw something that looks vaguely like lips. They're a little bit more full on my drawing than they are on my reference, but that's just because I'm trying to lay out the pieces. Leaving a little bit of room for the chin. My character has some definition to their chin here. Or my reference, I mean, has some definition to their chin here. They've also got some shading with the makeup, the face paint, the thing that they're wearing. Let's put this here. Add a little bit of shading across the top. All right. Do you guys see how this face came together? This is something that I want you to try practicing today. Because with methods like the Loomis method, that allows you to have more solid drawing, right? Allows you to maintain that consistency, allows you to maintain that weight, allows you to keep your characters the same so that they look, let me split my, I probably should have split my screen from the jump anyway. We'll just do this. Okay. Again, this is a strategy that takes practice. I'm going fast because I wanted to show you how the pieces, let me see if we can make this a little bit. It's pretty hard to see, I apologize. But you can see where I'm looking for that cranial circle, okay? Where I'm starting to see that cranial circle based on the nose, the eyebrows, the forehead, the cloth, if my character's wearing headpieces, okay? Translated here. This is where that ear cylinder lives. You want to imagine maybe like a pair of big headphones. That'll give you a good visual on where the ear lives. Okay. The bottom of your circle is basically the bottom of your nose. The next stage in the 1, 2, 3 rectangle is the bottom of the chin. And then you sort of just connect it as is related to your reference, or as close to related as your reference as you can, back up through the earphone, headphone, right up here. Okay? Does this make sense? Or am I talking out of my feet here completely? Okay. If you'd like more explanation, or if you'd like more examples, there is this Loomis Method video that I've linked here. Let's see if it comes up. It's a multi-part series. You don't have to focus too much on the expressions for now. I just would like you guys to practice ads. What? That's new. Anyway, this is about a 12-minute video going through another couple examples of how this artist lays out the planes of the faces a little bit more. But I would like you guys just to focus on the idea of that cranium sphere in relationship to a reference. So, how does this connect to today's work stuff? Let me refresh. It should fit a little bit better. This is the Loomis method, using those basic shapes to plot out a head. I would like you guys to think about what expressions you want your characters to make for this head turn animation, and then I would like you to draft a couple sketches, either using the Loomis method or whatever head drawing method you prefer. I just find this one very useful. Okay. Draw out some ways or some expressions and some heads using references, using your imagination. That'll get you in a good setup, a good mindset for how we can start turning these heads in space. Okay? Any questions? All right. There's a very short exit task. It's just a sentence. I would like you to do that before you leave today. You don't have to do it right now. But I would also like you to practice drawing these Loomis methods a little bit as well. Sweet. Thank you guys for listening. This is a skill we'll use lots, especially in character design. So this is our introduction, and we will return to the Loomis method. All right. Good luck.